Captain Taemin stared at the empty space where Earth should have been glowing with city lights and radio signals, but instead showed nothing but darkness and silence. The third planet from the sun hanging in space like a dead rock covered in strange blue and green patterns that made no sense to his scanning equipment, which had been trying to detect any signs of life for the past 6 hours without success. The bridge of the research vessel, Stellar Dawn, hummed quietly as his crew worked. At their stations, each one focused on their instruments, but finding the same troubling results that showed a world that should have been buzzing with the activity of billions of humans, but instead registered as completely lifeless, except for some very odd energy. Readings deep beneath the surface that his science officer Bora could not explain no matter how many times she ran the scans. "Captain, the readings are getting stronger," Bora said from her station, her voice carrying the worry that had been building in all of them since they entered the Sol system 3 days ago, against direct orders from the Galactic Federation, who had declared this entire area forbidden territory after Earth went silent over 300 years ago without any explanation or distress. Taemin walked over to her console and looked at the data streaming across the screen. Numbers and wavelengths that showed energy patterns unlike anything in the Federation database, energy that seemed to be growing stronger by the hour, as if something deep inside the planet was slowly waking up after a very long sleep. J1. "Any defensive systems detecting us?" Taemin asked his weapons specialist, who had been monitoring for any signs of danger since they arrived, knowing that a planet with this much mystery might have surprises waiting for visitors who came too. "Close, nothing. Captain, no weapons locks, no scanning beams, no defense platforms. It's like the whole system is completely dead, except for those energy readings Bora keeps finding," Jae-won replied while checking his instruments again, his fingers moving quickly over the controls as he searched for any threat that might be. Hiding in the darkness around them, xenobiologist Hae-jin looked up from her bioscanners with confusion written across her face as she reported what everyone feared to hear. "I'm not detecting any life signs on the surface. No cities, no agriculture, no electromagnetic signatures that would indicate civilization. It's as if 12 billion humans just vanished without leaving any trace behind." The crew fell silent as they considered what this might mean. 12 billion people disappearing completely was not something that happened naturally, and the Federation had spent decades trying to figure out what happened to Earth after the humans stopped answering. Their communications in 2534, with theories ranging from plague to war to voluntary isolation, but none of them explaining the total silence that followed. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in a facility buried 10 kilometers under what used to be the Korean peninsula, Dong-ho felt consciousness returning to him slowly, like waking from the deepest dream, his body connected to machines that had kept him alive and healthy for over 3 centuries, while the world above changed in ways no one could have imagined. His eyes opened. For the first time in 300 years, and immediately connected to the neural interface that had been waiting patiently for his return, information flooding his mind about the current state of Earth and the visitors currently orbiting overhead who had no idea what they were about to discover. The facility around him stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, a technological marvel that had been built in secret during humanity's final years on the surface, when they realized that their destiny lay not in the stars as explorers, but in something far more profound and necessary for the survival of all intelligent life. In the galaxy, Dong-ho sat up slowly, his body responding perfectly, despite the centuries of sleep, thanks to the nano-machines in his bloodstream that had maintained every cell and nerve while he rested, waiting for the day when his services would be needed again to protect what humanity had become. Through his neural link, he could feel them all, every human consciousness that had once lived and breathed on Earth's surface, now existing in a vast network that spanned the entire planet. Their minds connected in ways that transcended physical existence while maintaining everything that made them human, including their memories, personalities, and most importantly, their determination to survive. The network whispered to him of the approaching ship and its crew of aliens who believed they were investigating a dead world, not knowing they were actually disturbing the guardians of the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever seen. A civilization that had chosen to hide its true nature behind the illusion of extinction. Dong Ho stood and walked to the central command console, where holographic displays showed him everything happening on and around Earth, including detailed scans of the alien vessel and its crew who were currently trying to understand energy readings that were just the faintest echo of what lay sleeping beneath their feet. He could see Captain Taemin and his crew on their bridge, working hard to solve the mystery of Earth's silence, while having no idea that they were being watched by systems far more advanced than anything in their Federation, systems that had been quietly observing galactic civilization for 3 centuries, while pretending to be extinct. The collective consciousness of humanity spoke to him through the neural link, sharing their accumulated knowledge of the galaxy and its inhabitants, information gathered by probes and sensors that had been invisible to every alien species for hundreds of years, watching and learning and preparing for the day when their true purpose would be revealed. Dong Ho learned that the galaxy was in danger from something approaching from beyond its borders, something that had been detected by human deep space sensors decades before Earth went silent, something so terrible that humanity had chosen to abandon their physical forms and become something capable of protecting all life from the coming threat above ground. The alien research vessel continued its scans, while automated defense systems that had been dormant for centuries began to stir. Ancient human technology starting to power up in response to the presence of visitors who did not know they were, triggering protocols that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. Captain Taemin noticed the change first as his sensors picked up new energy signatures appearing all across Earth's surface, patterns of activation that suggested a vast network of technology coming online after being dormant for hundreds of years, technology that seemed far more advanced than anything the Federation had ever encountered. "Captain, something is happening down there," Bora called out with excitement and fear in her voice as her instruments detected massive power sources awakening beneath the planet's surface, power levels that should have been impossible for a dead world to generate. Hye Jin's bioscanners suddenly registered something that made her gasp in surprise. "Captain, I'm detecting a single human life sign, somewhere deep underground, but the readings suggest biological enhancement far beyond anything we've seen before." Jaewon's weapons console lit up with warnings as his sensors detected defense systems coming online all around them, not targeting them yet, but clearly preparing for action if needed. Defense systems that used technology completely unknown to Federation science. Taemin realized they had stumbled onto something far bigger than a simple mystery about Earth's silence. Something that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy if what they were seeing was real. And he knew that their small research vessel was completely unprepared for whatever was awakening beneath them in his underground facility. Dong Ho smiled as he felt the planet's systems responding to his return, knowing that the time had finally come for humanity to reveal what they had become during their centuries of apparent death, and that the galaxy was about to learn why Earth had chosen silence over contact for so long. The collective whispered to him of the ship above and its crew who would soon serve as messengers to carry word of Earth's awakening to every corner of the galaxy. Messengers who would tell the universe that humanity had returned and that nothing would ever be the same again. Dong Ho emerged from the underground facility through an opening that appeared in what looked like solid rock to the orbiting aliens, but was actually advanced camouflage technology that had kept humanity's greatest secret hidden for 3 centuries. His feet touching Earth's surface for the first time since the Great Transformation when 12 billion humans chose to leave their physical bodies behind. The world around him looked nothing like the Earth that Captain Taemin could see from orbit. Because while the alien sensors detected only empty land and dead oceans, Dong Ho saw the truth of what his world had become. a vast computational matrix where every grain of sand and drop of water was part of an enormous thinking machine that housed the consciousness of every human who had ever lived. Trees that looked normal from space were actually biomechanical constructs. The processed information at speeds beyond imagination, their roots extending deep into the planetary network that connected every part of Earth into a single living supercomputer, while oceans that appeared empty actually contained trillions of nanoscale processors working together to maintain the digital heaven where humanity now existed. Nari appeared beside him as a holographic projection, her image flickering slightly as she adjusted to communicating in the physical world after centuries of existing purely as information, her role as interface between Dong Ho and the collective consciousness making her the voice of 12 billion souls who watched the alien ship through sensors hidden across the planet. "The visitors are getting nervous," Nari told him with amusement in her voice as she relayed what the collective was observing through their surveillance of the research vessel. "They can detect the power awakening but have no understanding of what they're seeing. Their technology is so primitive compared to what we've become." Dong Ho nodded as he felt the planetary network sharing its accumulated knowledge with him. 300 years of watching the galaxy from hidden observation posts that no alien species had ever detected, learning about every civilization and species while gathering intelligence about threats that approached from beyond the galactic rim. Through the neural link, he experienced the memories of the collective, seeing how humanity had discovered the approaching danger decades before their apparent extinction, massive entities from another galaxy that consumed entire star systems to fuel their reproduction, creatures that would devour every world in the galaxy unless someone with the right technology could stop them. The decision to abandon physical existence had not been easy, but humanity realized that biological bodies were too fragile and short-lived to develop the weapons and defenses needed to fight beings that could eat planets. So they chose transformation into something that could think faster, live longer, and plan on timescales that biological minds could never comprehend above them. Captain Taemin made the decision that would change everything when he ordered his ship to descend toward Earth's surface to investigate the energy readings more closely, not knowing that automated systems were already preparing to capture his vessel and bring the crew face to face with the truth about humanity's fate. Dong Ho watched through the planetary sensors as invisible force fields surrounded the research vessel, technology that manipulated gravity and electromagnetic fields in ways that Federation science considered impossible, gently but irresistibly drawing the ship down toward a landing site that appeared empty but was actually surrounded by defense systems that could destroy entire fleets. The aliens realized they were trapped when their engines stopped responding and their ship began descending against their will. But instead of destroying them, the mysterious force brought them safely to ground on what looked like an empty plain, but was actually one of thousands of concealed facilities that dotted Earth's surface, like hidden eyes watching the stars. Taemin and his crew found themselves standing on solid ground for the first time in months, their ship powered down by systems they could not understand or resist, while all around them the air shimmered with energy patterns that their instruments could not identify, but which made their skin tingle with the feeling of being watched by something vast and intelligent. When Dong Ho appeared before them, walking, out of what had seemed like empty air thanks to his facility's camouflage systems, the alien crew experienced shock that went beyond surprise, because they were looking at a member of a species that the entire galaxy believed had been extinct. For over 3 centuries, you are looking at the last physical human in existence, Dong Ho told them in perfect Federation standard, his voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for 12 billion souls. But I am not alone, because my people chose a different kind of life when we realized what was coming to threaten all intelligent beings in this galaxy. Captain Taemin found his voice first, though it trembled with the magnitude of what he was hearing. The Federation declared your species extinct after your communications stopped. We thought your civilization had collapsed or been destroyed by some catastrophe, but you were alive all this time." Nari materialized beside Dong Ho as a shimmering hologram that made the aliens step back in amazement, her form clearly artificial, but somehow more real than anything they had ever seen. "We did not die, Captain. We evolved beyond the need for biological existence, leaving our guardian behind to protect our new form of life and to prepare for the war that is coming." Ye Jin stepped forward with her bioscanner still reading impossible data from Dong Ho's enhanced physiology. "Your life signs show biological enhancement far beyond anything we've encountered, cellular regeneration that should be impossible, neural activity that suggests direct interface with quantum-level computing systems." Dong Ho smiled as he felt the collective sharing their amusement at the aliens' attempts to understand technology that had been developed over centuries of focused effort by the most brilliant minds humanity had ever produced. Minds that now had unlimited time and processing power to solve problems that biological thinkers could never tackle. "My body has been maintained by nanomachines for 300 years while I slept, waiting for the day when visitors would come. And I would need to explain what humanity has become," he told them, gesturing toward the seemingly empty landscape around them that was actually buzzing with activity invisible to their primitive sensors through Nari. The collective began sharing carefully selected information about what they had discovered during their centuries of observation, showing the aliens images of deep space that revealed massive shapes moving between galaxies, entities so large that they could wrap around entire star systems like living blankets of destruction. "We call them the Devourers, because that is what they do," Nari explained, while projecting holographic images that made the alien crew gasp in horror. "They consume matter and energy to reproduce, turning entire civilizations into fuel for their expansion, and they are approximately 50 years away from reaching this galaxy." Bora stared at the projections with growing terror as she realized the implications of what they were seeing. "Those things are bigger than our largest space stations. How could any weapon possibly stop them from consuming everything in their path?" Dong Ho's expression grew serious as he prepared to reveal the truth that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. No conventional weapon can stop them, which is why humanity chose to become something unconventional, something that could develop the tools needed to fight monsters that eat planets for breakfast. The aliens watched in amazement as the landscape around them began to change, revealing the true nature of Earth's surface as camouflage systems deactivated to show them glimpses of the technology that lay hidden beneath the illusion of a dead world. Massive structures that pulsed with energy patterns that hurt their eyes. "To look at directly, for 300 years we have been preparing," Nari continued, her holographic form growing brighter as she drew more power from the planetary network. "Building weapons that work on principles your science has not discovered, developing defenses that can protect entire star systems, creating an army that exists as pure information but can manipulate matter and energy like living gods," J1 checked his weapons scanner and nearly dropped the device when it showed him energy readings that exceeded anything he had ever seen. Power sources beneath their feet that could apparently vaporize his entire ship without effort. Technology that made Federation weapons look like primitive clubs. The collective spoke through Nari with the combined voice of billions, sharing just enough of their knowledge to help the aliens understand the scope of what humanity had become. "We have been watching your galaxy for centuries, learning about every species and civilization, gathering the intelligence we need to coordinate a defense that will save all life from the approaching threat." Taemin realized that his research mission had uncovered something that would change everything the Federation thought they knew about: the universe. "Why are you telling us this? Why reveal yourselves now after hiding for so long?" Dong Ho looked up at the stars that were starting to appear in Earth's sky as the day faded into night. Stars that contained thousands of civilizations, that had no idea what was coming to destroy them. "Because the time for hiding is over." The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council erupted in chaos as Captain Taman finished his report about Earth's awakening, with representatives from 47 different species shouting over each other in languages that the translation systems struggled to convert fast enough, their fear and anger creating a cacophony that echoed through the massive chamber on the capital world of SciFiPrime Admiral Kyung-soo, one of the few humans who had been living in Federation space. When Earth went silent, tried to maintain order from his position at the command podium, but even his enhanced voice amplifiers could barely be heard over the panic that had seized the assembled delegates who were learning that everything they thought they knew about human extinction was a lie. The humans have been watching us for 3 centuries, screamed the Altarian ambassador, her tentacles writhing with agitation as she pointed at the holographic displays showing Earth's hidden technology. They could have been planning conquest this entire time while we believed they were dead. We have no idea what weapons they might have developed in secret. The Proximan delegate rose from his floating platform with his energy field crackling dangerously around his crystalline body. My people demand immediate military action against this threat. We cannot allow a species that faked their own extinction to suddenly reappear with technology that makes our defenses look like children's toys. Taman stood at the witness platform trying to explain what he had seen and heard on Earth, but his words were drowned out by the shouting of species representatives who were more interested in expressing their fear than listening to facts. Fear that had been building ever since humans first appeared in galactic civilization as explorers who seemed too curious about everyone else's technology and defensive capabilities. Bo-Ra, Jae-won, and Hye-jin sat in the observers section, watching their captain attempt to describe the reality of what humanity had become. But the assembled delegates were too frightened to process information that challenged their understanding of power and survival in a galaxy where technological superiority meant the difference between civilization and extinction. Admiral Kyung-soo finally restored enough order to speak by threatening to seal the chamber and flood it with sedative gas, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades managing the competing interests of species that barely tolerated each other under the best of circumstances. We need to focus on facts rather than fear, Kyung-soo announced while activating holographic displays that showed the evidence Taman's crew had gathered. The humans claim they have been preparing to defend the galaxy against an external threat, not planning to conquer it, and we need to determine whether their story is credible before we make decisions that could start a war. The Zephyrian representative stood with his metallic wings spread wide in a display of aggressive posturing that made other delegates move away from him. Emperor Wu Jin has already ordered our fleet to mobilize against Earth. We will not allow these ghost humans to threaten our empire with their phantom technology. Unknown to the Federation Council, the Zephyrian Empire had been planning expansion into the Sol system for decades, waiting for the official declaration that Earth was permanently abandoned so they could claim its resources, and the news that humans were not only alive, but technologically superior had turned their dreams of easy conquest into nightmares of potential defeat. Emperor Wu Jin himself was a descendant of human colonists who had settled in Zephyrian space before Earth went silent. But he had risen to power by rejecting his human heritage and embracing the aggressive military culture of his adopted species, making him even more determined to prove his loyalty by destroying the homeworld his ancestors had abandoned on Earth. Dong-ho felt the collective's vast intelligence network reporting the galaxy's reaction to their revelation. Observation posts throughout Federation space relaying information about military mobilizations and diplomatic conferences, where species debated how to respond to humanity's return from apparent extinction. Nari appeared beside him in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, her holographic form flickering with data streams as she processed reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians are mobilizing their entire battle fleet, while the Federation argues about what to do. It seems our reappearance has caused exactly the panic we expected. Dong-ho nodded as he watched tactical displays showing ship movements throughout the galaxy, massive fleets converging on the Sol system as various species decided that the safest response to humanity's return was immediate military action before humans could reveal the full extent of their capabilities. "How long before the first attack arrives?" he asked while connecting more deeply with the planetary network that had been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries, feeling the collective consciousness of humanity stirring as their guardian requested access to defensive systems that had never been tested in actual combat. Nari consulted data streams that moved too fast for biological minds to follow. "The Zephyrian fleet will arrive in approximately 14 days, followed by Federation task forces as various species overcome their initial shock and decide that preemptive strikes are preferable to negotiation." Through the neural link, Dong Ho felt the collective's anticipation as 12 billion human consciousnesses prepared to demonstrate why they had chosen transcendence over biological existence, why they had spent centuries developing technology that operated on principles the galaxy had never imagined possible. The Planetary Defense Network began activating systems that had been dormant since the transformation, drawing power from sources that converted matter directly into energy at the quantum level, awakening weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of physics like tools in the hands of cosmic engineers deep beneath Earth's oceans. Massive installations rose from trenches that had been artificially deepened to hide construction projects spanning continents, underwater cities that had been building automated factories and research facilities while the surface world appeared dead to any observers from space Jupiter's moons, revealed their true nature as the camouflage systems that had hidden them for centuries finally deactivated, showing massive defensive platforms that had been disguised as natural satellites, but were actually weapons installations capable of destroying entire fleets with energy beams that could reach across star systems. The asteroid belt began moving in patterns that defied natural orbital mechanics, revealing that thousands of rocky bodies were actually camouflaged ships and weapon platforms that had been waiting patiently for the day when they would need to defend Earth against invaders who thought they were attacking a defenseless world. Mars opened like a flower as its surface split along hidden seams to reveal the planetary shipyard beneath. Construction facilities that had been building vessels using technology that incorporated discoveries about space-time manipulation and matter. Conversion that would have been considered impossible by any galactic scientist. Dr. So Young, a xenopsychologist working in Federation intelligence, sat in her office on Centauri Prime, analyzing reports about human behavior patterns from before their disappearance, trying to understand whether the species that had once seemed so peaceful and curious could have been planning galactic domination. All along, her research into historical records revealed troubling patterns that no one had noticed during humanity's brief contact with galactic civilization. Subtle questions about defensive technologies and military capabilities that seemed innocent from explorers but took on sinister implications when viewed as intelligence gathering by a species planning for future conflict. "They were mapping our weaknesses," she told her supervisor while highlighting data streams that showed how human explorers had visited every major Federation world under the guise of cultural exchange. Every colony ship, every research expedition, every diplomatic mission was gathering intelligence about our military capabilities and defensive installations. But as So Young dug deeper into the historical data, she began to find evidence that contradicted the simple explanation of human expansion as preparation for conquest. References in human communications to external threats and defensive preparations that suggested they had been trying to protect the galaxy rather than conquer it. Meanwhile, throughout the galaxy, the hidden network that humanity had been building for 3 centuries began revealing itself as installations that had been dismissed as abandoned human colonies, suddenly came online with technology that made Federation science look primitive by comparison. The human colony on Kepler 442b that had gone silent 50 years ago was actually a massive sensor array watching for threats from beyond the galactic rim, while the failed mining operation on Ross 128c was revealed to be a weapon manufacturing facility that had been producing devices capable of defending entire star systems. Every human settlement that had mysteriously lost contact over the past 3 centuries was actually part of a galaxy-spanning defensive network that had been built in secret while maintaining the illusion that humanity was gradually dying out due to various disasters and equipment failures. The Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find a single planet defended by primitive technology and ancient human installations that had somehow survived 3 centuries of neglect. But instead, Commander G1 found herself staring at sensor readings that showed defensive capabilities beyond anything in Federation military databases. Her flagship, Eternal Glory, led a formation of 3,000 warships that represented the full military might of the Zephyrian Empire, vessels equipped with weapons that could shatter moons and shields that had never been breached in 2 centuries of galactic warfare. Yet the energy signatures emanating from Earth's solar system made her tactical computers issue warnings that her technology was insufficient for the mission. Commander, our sensors are detecting weapon platforms throughout the asteroid belt that appear to be mobile and targeting our fleet, reported her tactical officer, while trying to understand readings that showed rocky bodies moving in coordinated patterns that violated every known law of orbital mechanics. G1 ordered her fleet to battle formation while studying holographic displays that revealed the true nature of what they faced. Jupiter's moons were broadcasting energy signatures that identified them as massive military installations rather than natural satellites, while Mars had somehow opened to reveal construction facilities that were launching vessels of unknown design. Sir, the asteroid belt appears to be repositioning itself into defensive formations around Earth, called out her navigation officer with disbelief in his voice as he watched thousands of rocky objects coordinate their movements like living creatures responding to a shared intelligence that could think faster than biological minds. Through his neural link to the planetary collective, Dongho felt the anticipation of 12 billion human consciousnesses as they prepared to demonstrate the weapons they had been developing for 3 centuries, technology that operated on principles the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered and could not comprehend. Nari materialized beside him in the underground command center while data streams flowed around her holographic form like rivers of light, each stream representing monitoring systems and defensive installations that were awakening throughout the solar system in response to the approaching threat. The Zephyrian fleet is attempting to establish communication with us, she reported, while accessing the collective's vast intelligence database about alien military capabilities. Shall we respond with words or demonstrations? Dongho smiled as he felt the weight of humanity's patient preparation reaching its moment of revelation. Let them witness what we have become. The galaxy needs to understand why Earth chose apparent death over continued contact with civilizations that think in terms of conquest rather than cooperation. The first demonstration came from weapons platforms hidden in the asteroid belt that had been disguised as ordinary rocks for centuries, but were actually devices that could manipulate gravitational fields with precision that turned physics into an art form, creating localized distortions in space-time that reached out to embrace. The lead elements of the Zephyrian formation, Commander G1, watched in horror as her forward scouts simply vanished from existence, not destroyed by weapons fire, but apparently displaced into parallel dimensions by technology that treated the fundamental structure of reality like clay that could be molded by sufficiently advanced engineering. Our ships are being removed from normal space, her science officer reported with panic in his voice as he tried to understand sensor data that showed vessels disappearing without any conventional weapon signatures. Whatever the humans are doing operates on principles completely outside our understanding of physics. The second wave of demonstrations came from Jupiter's moons as they revealed their true nature by generating energy beams that reached across the solar system at velocities that should have been impossible. coherent streams of converted matter that struck Zephyrian vessels and reduced them to component atoms in milliseconds. G1 ordered her fleet to scatter and attack from multiple vectors while deploying every defensive system her ships possessed. But human technology responded to her tactics by creating gravitational wells that trapped entire squadrons of warships in areas of compressed space-time where escape was impossible and conventional weapons were useless. Commander, our shields are being penetrated by some kind of quantum-level attack that ignores all known defensive principles, her engineering officer called out as systems throughout the flagship began failing in ways that suggested the enemy could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The planetary defense network that humanity had built over 3 centuries revealed capabilities that made galactic military technology look like primitive tools wielded by children, weapons that could reach into the quantum foam of reality itself and reshape the fundamental particles that comprised matter and energy. Dong-Ho felt the collective's satisfaction as their defensive systems performed exactly as designed, demonstrating to the galaxy that humanity's apparent extinction had been a strategic choice rather than a sign of weakness, that they had used their centuries of isolation to become something that could protect all intelligent life from threats that conventional civilizations could never face. Half of the Zephyrian fleet simply ceased to exist as human weapons reached through normal space to affect the quantum probability fields that determined whether matter could maintain coherent existence, while the remaining vessels found themselves trapped in artificially generated regions where the laws of physics operated according to human preferences rather than natural constants. "This is impossible," Ji-Wan whispered as she watched her empires. Most powerful warships being systematically eliminated by technology that seemed to operate on principles beyond the reach of any known science. Weapons that treated her fleet like insects to be brushed aside by beings who had transcended the limitations that constrained ordinary civilizations. Mars opened further to reveal the full scope of the shipyard hidden beneath its surface. Construction. Facilities that began launching vessels designed according to principles that incorporated discoveries about space-time manipulation that would have driven conventional scientists insane with their implications about the nature of reality. New ships moved through space without any visible propulsion systems because they were actually manipulating the fabric of space-time itself to achieve velocities that turned them into weapons capable of appearing anywhere in the solar system. Instantaneously, demonstrating mobility that made conventional fleet tactics completely irrelevant through Nari, the collective spoke to the surviving Zephyrian vessels with the combined voice of 12 billion souls who had chosen transcendence over biological limitations. Your empire sent you to conquer a world you believed was defenseless, but Earth has never been more protected than it is now. Commander Ji-Wan found herself facing a choice between certain destruction and the humiliation of retreat as she realized that her invasion fleet had been reduced to a few hundred ships that survived only because the humans were allowing them to survive, demonstrating mercy that was somehow more terrifying than their overwhelming technological superiority. "We offer you safe passage to return to your empire with a message," Nari continued, while human weapons maintained perfect targeting. Solutions on every remaining Zephyrian vessel. Tell them that humanity has returned to take their place as guardians of this galaxy, and that conquest is no longer an option for species that choose aggression over cooperation. The demonstration concluded with the activation of defensive installations throughout human space that had been hidden for centuries, revealing the true scope of humanity's preparation as every former colony and abandoned settlement suddenly came online with technology that could protect or destroy entire star systems depending on the intentions of their neighbors. Emperor Wu Jin received news of his fleet's defeat with rage that quickly turned to terror as he realized that the humans had not only survived their apparent extinction, but had become something that could eliminate his entire empire without apparent effort. Beings who had spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this kind of confrontation, reports flooded in from across Zephyrian space about human installations that were suddenly revealing themselves on worlds that had been considered secure, hidden facilities that had been built under the cover of failed colonization efforts, but were actually part of a defensive network that now surrounded every major alien civilization. The Federation received similar reports as Admiral Kyung-soo tried to coordinate responses to the discovery that humanity had infiltrated every corner of galactic civilization while maintaining the illusion that they were gradually going extinct due to various accidents and equipment failures. Dr. So Young worked frantically to analyze the scope of human infiltration while realizing that every abandoned human settlement and failed colony had actually been part of a galaxy-spanning construction project that made the Federation's defensive capabilities look like primitive fortifications built by children. They never stopped expanding, she reported to the Emergency Council session while highlighting star charts that showed the true extent of human influence. The emergency broadcasts that flooded galactic communication networks carried news that made the revelation of humanity's survival seem insignificant by comparison, as deep space monitoring stations detected massive objects entering the galaxy's outer rim that moved with purpose and consumed everything in their path, like living disasters that turned star systems into fuel for their continued expansion. Admiral Kyung-soo stood before the Federation Emergency Assembly trying to maintain order as representatives from dozens of species received real-time reports about the approaching entities that had been designated as devourers. Creatures so vast that individual specimens could wrap around entire planets and strip them of matter in hours, rather than the geological timescales that natural processes required. The leading edge of their invasion force has reached the outer spiral colonies, he announced while holographic displays showed the systematic destruction of Federation outposts that had stood for centuries. Early reports suggest these entities reproduce by consuming planetary mass and converting it into additional devourers, creating exponential growth that will reach core Federation worlds within months. The Altarian ambassador raised her tentacles in a gesture of desperate inquiry while her translation device struggled to convert panic into coherent language. What weapons do we possess that could possibly affect creatures capable of consuming entire worlds? Our most powerful fleet armaments are designed to fight ships and space stations, not entities that eat planets for sustenance. Captain Tae-min watched from the observers section as species representatives who had been demanding military action against Earth suddenly found themselves facing a threat that made human technology look like salvation rather than conquest. Alien civilizations, realizing that their fears about humanity's power were nothing compared to the reality of extragalactic predators on Earth. Dong-ho felt the collective consciousness of humanity stirring with anticipation as their centuries of preparation finally reached the moment of ultimate purpose. 12 billion souls who had chosen transcendence specifically to develop the weapons and strategies needed to fight enemies that conventional civilizations could never hope to defeat. Ha-Young appeared in the command center as a holographic representation of humanity's strategic intelligence, her form incorporating data streams from observation posts throughout the galaxy that had been monitoring the approaching threat for decades while hidden from every alien species that might have panicked at the knowledge the Devourer advance. Scouts have begun systematic consumption of the Kepler-438 system, she reported while displaying tactical information that showed creatures kilometers in length, stripping rocky planets down to their cores and converting the mass into reproductive material for additional devourers. Dong-ho connected more deeply with the planetary network to access battle plans that had been refined over 3 centuries of preparation. Strategies that incorporated weapons designed to fight enemies who operated on scales that made conventional military thinking completely irrelevant. How many Federation worlds have been lost? He asked, while feeling the collective's vast intelligence. processing information from across the galaxy faster than any biological mind could comprehend. Young consulted data streams that moved like living light through her holographic form. 17 systems have been completely consumed, with devourer entities reproducing at rates that suggest the invasion force will reach critical mass within 6 months, unless immediate action is taken to disrupt their reproductive cycle. The alien species that had been mobilizing fleets against Earth found their military preparations suddenly redirected toward a threat that made their most powerful weapons look like primitive tools. While emergency councils debated whether to approach humanity for assistance or attempt independent defense against creatures that could eat starships like microorganisms, Emperor Wu Jin received reports about devourer activities in Zephyrian border territories and realized that his empire's aggressive expansion policies had placed them directly in the path of entities that viewed his worlds as convenient sources of raw material rather than civilizations worthy of consideration. Prepare our battle fleets for defensive operations, he ordered, while studying intelligence reports that showed devourers systematically consuming everything in their path without apparent regard for the intelligence or technology of their victims. If these creatures think they can devour Zephyrian worlds, they will learn why our empire has never been conquered. But as the first devourer reached Zephyrian space, Wu Jin watched his most powerful battle fleets disappear into the creature's mass like insects flying into a living storm. Their weapons, having no more effect than raindrops against a mountain, as the entity continued its systematic consumption of his empire's outer colonies. Dr. So Young worked frantically to coordinate Federation research efforts, while realizing that every conventional weapon in their arsenal had been designed to fight other technological civilizations, rather than living entities that could manipulate matter and energy at scales that treated entire planets like food sources. The Federation's most advanced theoretical. Physicists struggled to understand how creatures could exist that violated fundamental principles about the maximum size of biological entities, while their military strategists found themselves planning defenses against enemies that could simply consume their defensive installations along with the worlds they were trying to protect on Earth. The planetary defense network that had demonstrated overwhelming superiority against the Zephyrian fleet began revealing capabilities that had been held in reserve for exactly this moment. Weapons that operated on principles designed specifically to fight entities that could manipulate matter at planetary scales. The collective consciousness spoke through Ha Young with the combined wisdom of 12 billion souls who had spent centuries studying the approaching threat. Conventional weapons are useless against creatures that can absorb energy and convert matter at will. But we have developed countermeasures that attack the quantum foundations of their existence. Dong Ho felt the anticipation of humanity's transcendent intelligence as they prepared to deploy weapons that had never been tested against living targets. Devices that could reach into the quantum substrate of reality and disrupt the probability fields that allowed matter to maintain coherent existence. The first human counterstrike came from installations hidden throughout the galaxy, as humanity's secret network revealed its true purpose. Not just observation and defense, but active intervention capabilities that could project force across interstellar distances, using principles that treated space-time like a medium that could be manipulated by sufficiently advanced engineering devourer. Entities that had been systematically consuming Federation worlds suddenly found themselves under attack by weapons that ignored conventional physics. Energy beams that reached through parallel dimensions to affect the quantum foundations of their biology, while disrupting the reproductive processes that allowed them to convert planetary mass into additional creatures. The leading devourer queen, designated Insu, experienced something unprecedented in her species' million-year history of galactic consumption as human weapons attacked the quantum probability matrices that maintained her enormous body's coherent existence, forcing her to acknowledge that she faced enemies who could fight on scales that matched her own capabilities. The prey species have developed weapons that affect our fundamental structure, she communicated to the Devourer Collective through quantum entanglement fields that spanned the invasion fleet. These humans possess technology that treats the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute constraints. Humanity's response to the Devourer invasion revealed the true scope of their 3-century preparation as hidden installations throughout multiple galaxies suddenly activated, showing that their influence had extended far beyond their home galaxy while they maintained the illusion of being a single-world civilization. The weapons that human intelligence had developed specifically for this threat operated by manipulating the quantum foam that existed beneath normal reality, reaching into the fundamental substrate of existence to disrupt the information patterns that allowed matter and energy to maintain stable configurations. Dong-Ho coordinated the defense from Earth, while feeling the collective consciousness directing simultaneous battles across dozens of star systems. 12 billion souls working together to implement strategies that required thinking on timescales and complexity levels that biological minds could never achieve. The Devourer advance suddenly slowed as their reproductive cycle came under attack, from weapons that could prevent consumed matter from being converted into new creatures, disrupting the exponential growth that had made their species the dominant force in multiple galaxies. Queen Insu realized that her invasion force faced extinction unless they could adapt to human countermeasures. But the quantum-level nature of humanity's weapons made conventional evolutionary responses impossible because the attacks targeted the fundamental information patterns that defined existence itself. Retreat from this galaxy. She ordered her remaining forces while experiencing the unfamiliar sensation of fear as she recognized that humanity had become something capable of threatening Devourer.